on. You should have just got a pop-up. Don't hit leave or you'll get booted out of the meeting. But this is March 15th, 2022. This is the Downtown Worcester Square Management Team, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Tonight, we have a pretty good agenda, pretty packed agenda. We're going to hear some updates from our normal partners, the Police Department, Civilian Review Board, LCI, anybody from Economic Development here. We will see where that goes. Our alders, and then a longer report than normal from Yale University tonight as they give us an update on what's going on Wall Street. Excited to hear about that. Sad to see Naples gone. Excited to see what's coming next. Then we'll switch over to our city updates and an open forum. We're going to talk about a couple of highlights and things that neighbors have brought to us. Democracy School is open. There's communication from the East Shore management teams about a public hearing coming up soon about noise. And we're going to talk about the redistricting process and a public hearing coming up around that. Laura Clark and others are here that could chime in about that. Then I want to take a moment tonight to talk about our own executive board and our officers of this. This is the normal meeting where we have elections, but we are behind for many reasons. So we're going to go ahead and launch nominations tonight, accept nominations over the next month, and vote on those nominations in the April meeting. So we'll walk through that process later on, and then we'll hear meet and greet and get to talk a little bit about the new city plan director, Laura Brown. Right now she's at the end of the agenda because she's in a different meeting, so I was going to leave that and then come over here. So we might shuffle the back half of this agenda around if needed. I see Jacob here from City Plan, so thanks for showing up.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You too. Nice to meet you. All right. So with no further ado, let's get into our normal reports. New Haven Police Department, Lieutenant Bohr.
Hey, good evening. I'm going to be extremely brief tonight. We've had a good month. Crime is basically down across the board for downtown. We haven't had a commercial burglary for over a month. When I first got promoted, there was a while there we were getting probably 1 to 2 to 3 a week. We made a couple crucial arrests on that, and we're still looking for one individual who has warrants out for 3 of those burglaries. But since we made those arrests and the weather and stuff, it has basically gone away for now. We haven't had any car break-ins for over a month. That's also kind of unheard of since I've been here. We only had 1 vehicle stolen over this past month, and that was a rental from Avis Rental on Olive Street, which wasn't returned back to the rental car company by an owner, a known owner. We had 2 aggravated assaults over the past month. One was an incident at the New Haven Green where it was a dispute on a city bus where both patrons of the bus exited at the New Haven Green bus stop, and the argument escalated where one individual had some sort of an edged tool or a weapon and had sliced the victim. No major injuries. We're still looking to ID that guy. We have pictures and photographs. The second aggravated assault was a fight at a bar during one of our bar details, and that investigation is still going on. But other than that, crime has been extremely low for downtown. We've been very busy organizing a lot of our events. We just had the St. Patrick's Day parade. So planning that was busy the last couple of weeks. We had Walter Camp football this same past weekend. A big thing that's starting to happen downtown, at least since I've been here, is some of these bar crawls. There was one last weekend that was kind of a mess that I'm trying to get a hold of some of the event coordinators so it's a cleaner event for the businesses downtown. And that's really it. I know we have the Cherry Blossom Festival coming up. Sarah Greenblatt had reached out to me about that. I look forward to attending as well as helping in any way from the police department. But that's really all I have. It's been very good. Does anyone have anything for me?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Miriam. Thanks.
Miriam Grossman. Yeah, then what? So you mentioned bar detail, pub crawls. there's still some noise issues. I always wait for the weekend for the parade, but like there's still some issues with like cars that come and like it sounds like there are gunshots coming from their muffler. There's still the partying in the bar, in the bars and the late night stuff. So like, how are we progressing with getting that more under control, getting bar details, getting, police officers there, more regularly, et cetera?
There you go. Yeah, so the first issue there with the noisy mufflers, we do, again, a lot of that gets addressed with our drag racing detail. But typically when I'm able, I always try and get 2 motor unit officers for the bar detail, and they will address a lot of those violations. Again, that's kind of when resources are available, but we do give out tickets for improper mufflers and things of that nature when we're able to do that. And again, with bar detail, a regular bar detail consists of 4 officers. And it's kind of a big task to have 4 officers deal with sometimes very busy weekend bar crowds. That's definitely something on the radar. Noise is an issue and an ongoing battle. It's not something that they ignore. It's just they're kind of just doing the best that they can right now. But if there's a specific issue called in, it's a case-by-case basis where we can definitely address it. But I don't think it's a capability right now where we're going to be able to eliminate all bar noise from the weekends.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Lieutenant.
There are some cities that are doing noise cameras. I think Ashford showed this to me. Like so I think Paris or some, like how is New Haven considering something like that, like noise cameras to kind of get, get noisy motorcyclists in the act.
Yeah, so I'm fine with a lot of those things. I think the issue is getting some of those, getting cameras like that approved. I know there has been some pushback historically on that. It wouldn't necessarily, that would have to get approved through City Hall and things of that nature. But I just think historically there has been some pushback with traffic cameras and automated policing type materials like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Lieutenant. Any other questions for the Lieutenant or the New Haven Police Department? Seeing none. That was a speedy report. Thanks for that. Mr. Ham, with the report from the Civilian Review Board.
Okay, I put a link in the chat, which has all the detail anybody could want. And so the CRB completed 2 investigations and submitted recommendations to the chief on both of them. In both cases, because of delays in getting them done, the cases had already been closed. But the subcommittees that conducted them and the full CRB felt it was important for us to weigh in on behalf of the complainants. In both cases, we felt police officers should have apologized to civilians after the initial engagements, where there was not, I don't think they violated any rules of engagement, but we felt that they should have behaved differently. In one of the cases, we felt an arrest should not have been made. So we recommended the chief that individual police officers and also the police force in general should be cautioned to avoid behavior and practices that we called out. We also recommended changes in body cam policy. We believe that officers should activate their body cams when they exit their cruisers to respond to incidents and not wait until they encounter civilians. In one of these cases, an officer got out of the car and approached a building to investigate what had been reported as a burglary. So all of the initial kind of investigation was not captured. And that was actually critical to anybody observing this to decide whether the right things have been done. So we're asking for that kind of thing. I think in our initial cases, a lot of what we're doing is recommending, some changes in procedures that we think would be better and that would improve fairness and trust. There was another case, and I'll mention this one because it's very important. 21I041. The I means that the investigation was requested by the chief, not by a civilian. And this is the one where the city firefighter committed suicide in the course of the investigation, and in the course of the incident. And we suspended because the Corp Council ruled that the ordinance does not give us jurisdiction over investigations initiated by the chief or command staff. So we are now engaging with the Corporation Counsel's office and the alders in an effort to get the ordinance amended so we can have a say in such cases. This is very important because some of the most important cases that come up, of the cases of potential misconduct, are initiated by the chief, and often there's not a complainant. So we need to be able to weigh in on those. So I have, within that document, there are the recommendations that we sent to the chief in the two cases. One involved a woman who was stopped because her car matched the description of a car involved in a shooting, and it was a high-risk stop, so there was a lot of gun pointing and shouting. And we felt that ultimately, since she had nothing to do with the case, the officer should have apologized to her. And the second case involved two youths who were pursued by police, even though they had not done anything wrong. They were terrified and ran, and ultimately they were arrested for running from police. And we felt the officer should have used discretion and not arrested them. So those were the cases, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Any questions? Seeing none, I have one. Just on the, if the chief brings it forward and no civilians thing, I know we talked a little bit last week about, like, is there a possibility of just filing our own complaint? But I am curious about a little bit. So if the chief says, hey, we're going to do this investigation, that does seem to be a very internal process, right? So you could see how that, but is there like maybe a flag or something that could happen of, like, as soon as the chief opens up a thing, it automatically opens a case with the CRB or something?
Well, that could be part of the amendment to the ordinance, but the ordinance simply does not, only mention civilian complaints. And it's very specific about that. And I think, after much discussion, our feeling was that the drafters of the ordinance, the alders, probably did not understand that often the most important cases are not initiated in that way.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of going back and it was their intent for all cases of misconduct to be overseen by us, but they didn't put the right words in the ordinance. So
Well, I will be interested to see how that unfolds and offer my help as well. So
very good. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
absolutely, Mr. Werrell.
Thank you. I'm curious about the discipline that has been meted out in the past regarding the failure to turn on body cameras. And I'm curious about, does the Civilian Review Board have a stance on that? Is it optional for officers?
It is not optional.
Because it is, why is there not a necessary implementation of some sort of discipline?
Well, there is. In this case, the officer followed the rules, which were you turn on the body cam when you engage with a civilian. So they followed the rules. So we're suggesting, let's have officers turn on the body cam as they exit their cruiser or begin an investigation in the scene, so that we get it from the beginning. So also, they're not supposed to turn the body cam off. And sometimes officers forget to turn it on, and sometimes they accidentally turn it off, because you can imagine it's got a button in front of their chest. And often, if they're called upon to do something that involves wrestling with a person or running or all sorts of things, that could be a reason why the body cam turns off. So the chief typically, if it's a first violation, it's probably just a notice and a warning. But after, if there's repeated violations, that's when people start to get disciplined. Now, we also, it's a strange feature of this body cam system that the first 30 seconds of the video captured does not have audio with it. I don't know what the technical reasons are for this, but I imagine, I mean, I'm a technology writer, and I can tell you that that can be fixed. So we would like them to get the provider of the equipment to get it so the audio turns on immediately, because if you can't hear the first 30 seconds, key exchanges of words, a gunshot, all sorts of things can't be seen. So we've also asked them to engage with the contractor to get that fixed.
Thank you, Mr. Worrell, for that question, and Mr. Ham for the answer. I think this is a very important thing, and I just want to take a moment and commend Mr. Ham's work on the board. Probably might be my last chance to do so as the chair, but really, I think we've been really very impressed and thankful for your service on that. So, and your in-depth reporting in
Yes,
what
thank you.
happens afterwards.
Hopefully, it's not too much.
No, it's very good. I mean, I do think that just on this, and both between the Civilian Review Board and the police reports, I want to be clear that that is the original charge of this team. The management team is supposed to work on the community policing relationship, right? I think we've drifted quite a bit into a lot of things that impact our neighborhood, which is good. It's good to be. I see Art right now. Arthur, he might be in the neighborhood as we speak. But I do think that this first portion of the meeting is where we have the most authority as a management team, and we should spend much more energy in figuring out the ways that we want our city to be policed in our interactions with the city and the oversight of said police force. So thanks for your service, and thanks for the thoughtful questions, everyone.
Thank you.
And how much longer is your term?
I think my term is a little bit less than 1 more year.
Okay, it's important to know, because Mr. Ham was elected from the Worcester Square downtown district, but has since moved to East Rock and is still filling that term for us. But I think when that term is up, someone else from the neighborhood will have to step up. So start taking notes now.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to be a technical writer, but it really helps apparently.
Right.
So thank you very much. All right, next up, in the field, Arthur Natalino from the LCI. You're on mute, Arthur.
Can you guys hear me better? I'm in a bad service area.
That's okay, we can hear you great.
All right, good. All right, good evening. Yeah, I'll be brief too. It was somewhat of a quiet month. So just to be brief, I was actually really busy collaborating with the public space inspectors about some illegal dumping and trash and recycling bins, just trying to continue to educate residents and landlords about the 24-hour model. And we did that with a couple of moments of snow there. Hopefully, cross our fingers, we don't have to do that going forward compared to today's weather. So yeah, just continue to monitor spots like Wallace Street, William Street were some big areas this month. I can tell I had a couple of I had more private property issues, especially reported on C-Click Fix this month. So for instance, I had some unauthorized storage issues. I had some a lot of bulk trash. I think some people were moving out, and another thing is just to try and make people understand about how the anti-blight ordinances work. So one of them was actually a new landlord, so he just came in, but he very responsive. I know that the graffiti was actually not as bad, but I know there's some areas that I have on the list. Like I said, winter conditions. Now that they're getting better, we have a whole list. We're going to get to those in the coming weeks. So thank you for being patient on those. And yeah, I know right before, last month, I know there was a lot of residents were concerned about that noise over there near the U-Haul area. I wanted to reach out and thank. There was a really nice gentleman who does management over there. He was very, very helpful in assisting to coordinate to where that noise was coming from. So we were able to address that. I know some residents over there were concerned about that. Yeah, there was, especially in their grand coming back to Hamilton, there was a couple of areas of dumping that are new case. I'm going to follow up on those. A couple on Worcester Street also, bins. I know there's a couple of new developments over there that people are concerned about. I'm working on that. St. John Street is actually pretty quiet. Lion Street, a couple of bins here and there, but it was actually pretty quiet. Yeah, and like I said, just beginning parts of the downtown there, East Rock of Orange Street. Oh, there was a thing. I had a really big case on Orange Street. A multi unit had a dumpster overflowing. It was out of control, but management was very responsive with that. Yeah, that was pretty bad. They responded in 24 hours. So I know people were worried about possible rodent developments, but we were able to get on that within 24 hours. So I know that was a big C-Click fixed private property issue. But other than that, I just continue to, follow up, collaborating, especially with the new public space inspectors, because they really are good. We got two public space inspector on the ground, and I continue to work very thoroughly and engage with them. So if anybody has any questions, like I said, it was somewhat of a quiet month, but also before I forget, I know that now they're starting to get warmer. I'm just going to throw it out there. I know that come spring and fall, residents and neighbors like to get together and do some spring cleanups in the neighborhood. I'm open to some suggestions. I know we sometimes collaborate with some university students, residents. So let's start getting those rolling so we could maybe do them in maybe April or possibly May.
That would be great. Arthur, I just went back and forth with, so Quinnipiac University, a great source of free labor sometimes, when one of their neighborhood cleanup days is doing it on April 9th. So on April 9th from 10 to 1, we have a bunch of people who we can hand rakes and all sorts of things. So
good. And like I said, I could, if there's a shortage of supplies, Public Works is very good at able to assist me with that. Some pokers, rakes, bags, the works. So also I could reach out to the lady I had a contact with at Southern to see if we could start getting something before the kids leave, maybe late April, May. We try to do one. We've been doing, we established a good relationship the past 3-4 years, even when I was a specialist in the Hill. We like to do one spring, one fall. So let's try to do that, because I know Southern students or any other students maybe get out like mid-May. So let's maybe see if we could coordinate one for like late April or something.
that'd be great. Yeah. So just the Quinnipiac event is on the 9th. So if we want those guys, that's on April 9th.
Okay. Yeah, let me know how many heads, and
we'll,
I got some pokers that I could try to get, bags, rakes. Let me just let Public Works know ahead of time, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. We'll talk to Lori.
All right, if anybody has any questions, I'm here.
All right, any questions for LCI? Any questions for LCI? All right, Arthur. That was an easy one.
Right. No problem, man. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Just so everybody knows and remembers, C-Click Fix is your fastest way through. And you can always email or call Arthur as well. Just a couple updates on what we've been, on some of the things that we've been doing behind the scenes. We've been working, and I've fielded a bunch of phone calls around two things in the Worcester Street area. One is the lighting in the Worcester Street Mall, and we're finally communicating with UI, who is actually going out and adjusting those lights. So because there's a lot of light intrusion into the neighbors' houses and yards and mines and underneath their eyelids. It was quite bright over there. There is a light ordinance, and it is good. So if you have any problems about any of the UI installed lights, the really bright floodlights, the LEDs that have been put up, those are actually owned by UI and then rented to users, but UI will come out and adjust them if you have a problem. So feel free to hit me up, or you can reach out to Sharon Pask. You'd have to find her name and number, but Sharon Pask is the UI representative. Additionally, and you might have seen in the Independent yesterday, Manning Management is on the move and expanding into Worcester Square for the first time. There's been some complaints from residents on Warren Street about a sign that went up on the end of Warren. I know that Arthur and the Public Spaces and Code Enforcement team is working on that as well. So that's in process. We're going to try to figure out where that goes. In that, we also found out that, because I looked up the ordinance, our little Worcester Square garden signs are also in violation of that ordinance, so we have to figure out what to do there. So the Worcester Square, or the downtown Worcester Square management team signs are on the wrong side of that law. So oops, we'll try to figure that out. Amusing though. All right, any other quality of life LCI issues? Seeing none, let's move on to Kathleen. I see you here. Is there any economic development updates that you'd like to give? Sorry.
Hi, sorry. I'm picking up my daughter someplace. I'm gonna step
That's okay.
outside.
We can-
Does anyone
we
have
can
any
circle
questions
back.
for me?
Any questions for economic
hear me?
development? Yeah, we got you. Thank you so much for making yourself available. It's up. All right, it looks like that's easy. So back to the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Alder Guzne, would you like to give a report?
Thanks, Ian. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying the nicer weather that's out here. Starting yesterday. Hopefully, we'll see more of that as the days goes on into spring and into summer. I'll just be brief and share a few quick updates about things here in downtown that I've been working on or that I know of that are pertinent to everyone. One is that the Ives main library, right next to the green, is now offering passport services. So if you need to renew or need to get a new passport, we have it at our local libraries, or at our local library here in downtown. I think the hours are Wednesdays, Thursdays, 3 to 7 p.m. And then Saturdays, 11 to 3:30 p.m. And you'd have to make an appointment, but those are the hours. And I know folks are gearing up to travel over the summer. And so if you need a passport, you need to renew one, that's a resource that's available, and I'll put it in the chat right now, I think. And then, so there's that. Another update that I have is that a few weeks ago, we had a giveaway on the green for Black History Month as part of the city's Black History Month sort of programming, where the Youth and Recreation Department set up a tent and gave away a lot of masks, food, and a few more pieces of information that I don't remember because it was a few weeks ago, but that went great. And definitely looking forward to doing more stuff like that, or helping contribute stuff like that. So props to the city and the Youth and Recreation Department for doing that. Then something else also working with LCI and TTP, and working with Arthur and the folks from Transportation, Traffic, and Parking on various lights that are off or flickering on parts of Church Street right in front of City Hall, parts of Elm Street near the library. There's a few of them that are off or flickering, and just trying to make sure everything, our downtown area has enough light, especially when it gets darker. Then when it comes to things happening up at the city, Fire Chief John Alston was reappointed recently. I serve on the Aldermanic Affairs Committee, and we had our hearing regarding that. and the Board of Alders approved him at the following full board meeting. So there's that. Also had my first community development committee meeting, and there's actually another community development committee meeting next week. So if you're interested in that, we'll be talking about a land disposition agreement that was agreed to, I think, maybe a year ago or a few months ago. Just revisiting that. And we have yet to meet as a Health and Human Services Committee. And then finally, mayor's budget season has come around again. Mayor's budget has been submitted. It's just some key highlights from that budget so far as proposed. Of course, it goes through 2 public hearings, and that information I'll probably write in the chat after I quickly check to make sure. But yeah, some highlights of that proposed budget, which again will go before the Board of Alders for any amendments or any changes. But as it stands, some of the changes include setting aside money for crossing guards, setting aside money for police lieutenant and sergeant positions, 2 additional nurses, and a public health nurse coordinator to help get more nurses in our schools, a chief technology officer, additional youth and recreation deputies, and increased livable city inspectors. So those are just some highlights. Again, I'll probably put in the chat after, again, I check the dates just to make sure. But I definitely encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about the budget or testifying in favor or against anything related to the budget. Definitely encourage folks to turn out and make their voices heard, because it helps us all do a better job of making sure we craft a budget that benefits the city of New Haven and our residents. Yeah, other than that, that's some of the stuff we've been working on. Again, sort of getting adjusted to the routine of the committees, and as the days and the months go on, will definitely be a lot more to report on in terms of redistricting. That's also a big thing coming up that it's already started. And so, yeah, that's all I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Alder. I see answers to the question.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were reviewing a DLDA. Is it for a property in the downtown Worcester Square area, or is it another part of the city?
Yeah, it's another part of the city. It is in the Dixwell area, specifically between, let me see, it's right here, just looking through it. Yeah, it's in the Dixwell area, the Beola Land Development Corporation. I'm probably butchering the name, but the material should, I'm assuming, be available on the city's website, which you can go check out as well. All I know is that yeah, it's a long story short, it's in Dixwell, not here in downtown. Yeah.
Beulah Heights, and it's a really excellent affordable housing developer connected with the Beulah Heights Church.
Yeah. Thank you, Anxious.
Thank you, Answers. Thank you, Alder. Any other questions for Alder Guzman? All right, seeing none. Do we have Alder Rodriguez with us tonight? I do not see her. That's okay. There's a budget forum, so I think a lot of people are there, including Alder Sabin and Alder Kupo is picking up my child, so she is occupied, and I appreciate her for that. So our aldermanic reports are short tonight. Thank you, Alder Guzman, for carrying the water for the rest of your colleagues there. And with that, we're going to pivot to. Actually, let me do this. Let me, Ms. King, if you'd be okay, I'd like to just open the public forum very briefly, just for any problems or anything that's going on in the community before we get into our reports, just because that's normally the way we do it. And you guys have a development report tonight. Is that okay with y'all? Great. Ms. Grossman.
Yes, hi. So, I'm very happy with the Gale Saliva Direct testing site in the green that replaced Ren. They actually listened to my feedback and changed the hours to accommodate the lunchtime crowd during the week and, on the church crowd on Sundays. And today I was there and a lot of people, more people seem to be there than usual, which is good and bad. But one thing is that quite a few people come there and ask for home test kits. And, all these people have insurance, so they can't just walk into a drugstore and get a test kit with their insurance. And I know New Haven Rising has been giving out test kits. And then one of the women who work at the Yale Saliva Direct called New Haven Rising to see if they can get home test kits at that site, even though they already do PCR testing, because people keep asking for them. It'd be great if they were able to just pick up the kit and take home with them. Also in New York City, the public libraries have home test kits to take home. So how come the test kits distribution kind of seems to have stalled? And unless you have insurance or, besides the post office test, you can't get any tests. It's hard to reach New Haven Rising. There should be ways you can go to the public library, or these nice folks, Yale Saliva Direct, can give you a test kit if you want. Also, I'm still nervous that if I get COVID, I'm still worried. Now I'm hearing the NPR said that Congress, they don't fund more money. They're going to be cutting money for if you're not insured, you're not going to get vaccinated. If you're uninsured, no coverage for vaccines. They're going to cut testing for uninsured. They're going to cut monoclonal antibody, money for that. And I'm just really scared. And I still want to know, if I get COVID, even if I'm fully vaccinated and boosted, what can I do? Who do I call? How do I make sure I get the medicines I need? And I won't be left out in the cold or triage behind someone who's not vaccinated. And then they'll get the stuff ahead of me. I'm just really worried about that. And the last thing I'm worried, and another thing I'm worried, especially since there's no more masks now where I work, and the next thing I'm worried about is that I went to the Ren test lab a couple times when they were still open. State lab, and I work for the state, I have state insurance. Mantha, my state insurer, said that it's an out-of-network lab. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope I don't get a bill from Ren, but it would be very ironic that a lab the state contracts with is considered an out-of-network lab with my state health insurance. And I really hope there's not another situation like with Dr. Murphy where people are getting bills. I hope Ren does not bill me, but that would be very concerning if they did. So those are my issues. What to do if I get COVID? More test kits available to the regular, to the public. And make sure Ren doesn't bill me.
Okay, thank you. I see Greg, and he might have an answer to at least one of those.
Yeah, I can't help with all of that, but our chair himself actually dropped off several boxes of at-home tests at the Devil's Gear Bike Shop, and they are free for the taking. I think there are more than 300 boxes of 2-packs. So come on down, pick up a bunch, as many as you want.
Right, because I can bring them to the testing site in the green, because that's even though it's another testing site, people like to bring at the at-home tests, so that's a good idea to get some and bring them to the green to give those nice folks there some kits to give people.
And spread the word too.
Oh, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that briefly, so for folks who don't know, my day job is the communications director for the unions and also New Haven Rising. So through a partnership with the Department of Health and the governor's office, we've now secured 20,000 kits of free and open to anybody rapid tests. So if you know anybody, or if you know anybody that needs one, go ahead and email info@newhavenrising.org. And if you have a distribution apparatus that can hand them out, like Miriam, if you could take a box and then hand them out through your own network, we'd be happy to give you a case. So if that'd be helpful.
Can you give a case to the the Saliva Direct people on the green, and maybe a case to the public library?
We might be able to. It's the thing right now is I think we can hand them out to people just fine, but as soon as we start getting into different organizations, then can they hand them out? Do they have liability? It's not up to. How about this? We're not saying no to giving to them, but we've had trouble having institutions accept them and then hand them out with that liability.
But Yale Saliva Direct, one of the ladies actually called New Haven Rising today, left a message. So she's interested in the test kits at the Saliva Direct testing site. So she actually called you guys.
I'll circle back with our team and make sure we close the loop on that. Thanks for the heads up there.
No problem.
I think there were more questions there, but I can't answer many of them, unfortunately.
Well, like I said, make sure Ren doesn't bill me, because it would be really terrible if they were billing people who are insured with state, if it's a state, contracted place, testing site. And also, like I said, I would love someone from Department of Health or Yale, New Haven to come on and tell me if I get COVID, what do I do? Who do I call? How do I get these new medicines? Will they be cut off? Like, I just want to know what to do,
I understand. Mr. Werrell.
Thank you. I'm sorry that Alder Sabin couldn't be here this evening because I did have a few questions for him. And I just hope that the other people who came to the meeting today have access. Are you all on his email list, Alder Sabin's? If you aren't, I would suggest that you do get on it because Alder Sabin sent out a message yesterday announcing that he was going to move to block development in his neighborhood, in his ward that doesn't abut our ward. And so I was struck by it because I feel like many of us in this committee meeting went and spoke about the proposed development by PMC, which again is a known quantity for being a not nice developer. And Alder Sabin did not seem to listen to us as carefully as he perhaps could have, because in his email, he mentions that the development on Whitney Avenue, which incidentally I oppose, would essentially, quote, make the city's zoning code meaningless, end quote. And he goes on to say that adding in the complete lack of respect or care showed by the developers and the rejection of community input about how a new building on the site could fit into the neighborhood, this proposal should not go forward. And I guess what I'm bringing this up to all of us here is what I find upsetting about that, and frankly laughable, is just the distinction he makes between his own backyard and our backyard in terms of what he cares about when the community either opposes it, because many of us had very real complaints about the proposal that PMC put forward, complaints that were not rooted in some antagonistic NIMBY-like opposition to affordable housing. So to hear that that development is not okay, but the one that we spoke against is okay, and then also to hear that the zoning code is some precious tome that should never be changed or altered, when in fact there was a zoning alteration made to accommodate PMC. So I'm frustrated with that, and I hope that as a community of neighbors, we can attempt still to do something about this. There are numerous problems. Oh, here he is. Maybe he has an update and he'll talk about that, so I will stop talking.
All right, Mr. Werrell, thanks. That was unfortunate timing, wasn't it? A minute earlier would have been great. All right, let me just think about how to reorganize this. All right, let's do this. Alder Sabin, thanks for joining us. Are you able to give an update?
What would people like
just
an update on?
your standard aldermanic update.
Oh yes, well, I'm sorry, folks. I'm at the mayor's budget forum at Career, and I didn't have too much in the way of updates. Mostly wanted to encourage folks to look at what's in the city budget and engage throughout the process this spring. But my understanding is that we were talking about some of the development going on in Ward 7, and I wanted to sort of explain my thinking about the 78 Olive Street site as well as the Whitney site. And I think that it's really important for us to be able to, have nuanced and difficult conversations about these developments and figure out what makes sense on a case-by-case basis. And I don't have a universal policy of supporting development or opposing development. I think a reasonable approach to this stuff is to try to figure out what makes sense, each time something comes up. And I think each of the projects are very different There's no demolition at 78 Olive Street, whereas there's a historic building that would be demolished. On Whitney, there is no residential property that directly abuts the lot on Olive Street, whereas there is on Whitney. And I think that there is also a significant difference in how the developer in each instance has approached the process. And the developer on the Whitney site has been incredibly rude and disrespectful to the community. And I think that factors into my feeling about how we should approach the project. And with the Olive Street project, I think the developer tried pretty hard to incorporate our feedback, and I've been continuing to have conversations with them about the size of the building, and I don't have any updates yet. I've been waiting to hear back from them, but I think it's possible that we may be able to make some changes that folks will be excited about. I can't make any promises because I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but I do, again, just think it's important that these are really difficult issues, and I'm just trying my best to make the decisions that I think are the best interests of the city and in the neighborhood on a case-by-case basis. And I don't think it would make sense to have a blanket policy in favor or against of development broadly. We got to figure out what's best for the city and for the neighborhoods. So those are some thoughts, but definitely happy to answer any more questions and talk through it.
Thank you, Alder. All right, so I want to respect the queue and respect people's ability to ask questions here, and so we're going to do that. But I also would ask Alder Sabin if you're able. Are you able to hang out for a while?
Yeah, I popped out of the forum, so
Okay.
I'm here.
I think it might be appropriate to hear the two questions on the queue. If we could then table this and resume this conversation after Yale's report. And Alder, if interesting to you, I could let you know when we come back to it. That would be my proposal, but I'll go ahead and let Mr. Wells speak at the moment.
As I spoke previously, I will cede to Ansris Farwell for the first question.
Ansris, would you like to speak?
Ian, I think that your idea of holding this a little bit, as long as people can stay. We have the Yale report, and we have a special guest or two guests from
Indeed.
Laura Brown and Jacob Robinson. And some of these things, I think I can see there's many people on this call that are very anxious and interested to get into that discussion. So I think your plan of moving ahead, but holding some time at the end. I have a lot of things I would say in response to what Alder Sabin has said.
All right. Well, then here would be here's the plan. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's move to Yale. Let's hear the report and the updates on the Wall Street development from Yale. After that, we will do a quick rundown on our internal elections, and then we'll merge the city plan, the intro to city plan, and let that morph into a discussion about our previous conversations. So with that, I turn this over to Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. My name is Karen King. I am the Community Affairs Liaison for the Office of New Haven Affairs at Yale University. Joining me today are Jeremy Powers. He is the lead planner in the Facilities Department for Yale University, as well as James Fulton, who is a planner in the Facilities Department at Yale University. We are here to present an overview of the proposed renovation and the changes that we are making at the 82 to 90 Wall Street site. Most of the work will take place, as Mr. Dunn noted, at the former Naples, which is a nice throwback for me, Naples/Wall Street Pizza location. So with that, I will turn it over to James Fulton to give you an overview.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone having me. I'll just pull up my screen here for the presentation. All right, is everyone seeing the plan now?
There it is.
Here it is.
Okay, just a little bit of a delay there. All right. So again, as Karen introduced, I'm James Fulton. I'm a planner in the facilities department at Yale, and I've had the oversight of the design phases for this project to renovate at the Wall Street Pizza. And so just to orient you, if you're seeing my cursor, we're at the site of where Wall Street Pizza is. Also in that same block is Blue State and Phil's. So that's in Wall Street between Temple and College. It's bounded on the east side by the pedestrian walkway that passes between the 82 to 90 Wall Street building and the Slifka Center. On the west side, we abut Steckel Hall, which is the school of, sorry, not the School of Music, the Department of Music for Yale University. And then this building and property that is this long jogged rectangle in the rear of our property is the Elizabethan Club, just to orient everyone. Primarily, what we're focused on today in this presentation and with the renovation is the former pizza, the pizza location, including a full demolishing of the block and brick amalgamation, which was the pizza kitchen, and proposing to add some classrooms off the rear and a rear terrace. And I'll walk through and show you how that works through the plans. So, you know, on the rear side, there's a sort of similar massing with a structure built out of the back of the existing building here. Plan-wise, again, to reorient you, because this is kind of different from the site plan, Wall Street is along the bottom of the page, working from left to right. There's the barbershop retail area. There's shop, Blue State retail area, and then the former pizza place, which took up 3 bays of the original building. So our proposal accommodates a full gut renovation of the interior here, and as I said before, a demolition of the pizza kitchens and the creation of a dividable large seminar room that can be 2 seminar rooms. So classrooms, bathrooms, lounge, academic space here on the first floor, letting out to a terrace, which we see as a shared Yale and community amenity. We've already had some discussions with Blue State about use of exterior space. So definitely an improvement on what's back there now. There are 2 accessible entries into the building. The main one into the academic space here. I'll show you a view on the outside so you'll understand kind of why there's this jog here. And then one from the pedestrian walkway into the existing rear. This is already an accessible route up through a half stop on an elevator to this raised lobby, which then puts all of this first floor at the same level. We've also been discussing with Blue State on putting a door into here so that they would finally have an accessible entry, which we think is a amenity to the coffee shop and the community to have that entryway into there. Let me move on to the next slide. This is just a view along Wall Street again from left to right with the barber shop and the coffee shop. Here's a photograph of what exists now. So currently, the facade of the pizza restaurant is out at the property line. We're proposing to push that back to respect the yard setback, but to create a sort of covered portico here in order to get to this, this entry level. What that looks like is something like that. So because the sidewalk slopes away, you enter here, pass behind this sort of low wall, and this is the main entry into the academic space in the same sort of massing along the street that the existing storefront has. No real major changes on the upper level. It has been in the past faculty offices, and it will remain faculty offices. As far as the exterior is concerned, we're proposing a window replacement. There'll be maintenance and things on brick and brick repointing, but the body of the building will look no different. This is the main difference on the Wall Street side. And then just a similar in the evening. Moving around to the rear, just a little more detail about what's being proposed on the back side. So based on some discussions that we've had with the Elizabethan Club, this is their garden here. Some good discussions we had a couple of months ago. We've incorporated some of that feedback. And what we're proposing is that we treat our perimeter or our edge as a series of brick garden walls that their planting and garden can go up against. And then this area, which is in the area of the pizza kitchen that will be demolished, where the two classrooms are, this is a sort of lower and smaller massing than what's there. So trying to respect our neighbors and pull back a little bit from what's there. But again, this is that amenity space. This is that back accessible entry that would give the accessible entry into Blue State. Here's approaching that terrace. This is that entryway. It's showing gray because it's existing condition and nothing and not changing, but that's a glass door into the back building. Then up the steps, the terrace, the classrooms, Blue State to the right, and then turning, looking the other direction at the end of the terrace. Logistics wise, we've engaged a construction manager and have been in made some preliminary plans. The building will have to be scaffolded, there will be continual access to all the retail properties. Because we're near the property line on the rear, there'll be some impact on the Elizabethan Club again, which we've had some initial discussions about. Predominantly, there'll be dumpsters and other things back in this in the parking lot, and then access will be through the pedestrian walkway. But again, pedestrian ways will be maintained. Retail access will be maintained throughout the project. So that is the 30,000 foot overview of what's going on, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. I'll open for questions for others. Just what's the timeline on this project?
Sure. So we're currently still in our design phase. Our target is construction starting in January of 23 through the calendar year 23. So January to December of next year.
Great, thank you. Mr. Werrell.
Hi, and I apologize, Mr. Fulton, if this isn't a question in your wheelhouse. Perhaps Ms. King would know the answer. Did Wall Street Pizza, Naples Pizza, pay property tax as a private business?
Yes, it was all the retail spaces at that location paid taxes. They were taxable.
Thank you. And given, just if you'll forgive the follow-up question, given that there are going to be classroom spaces, I take it that these will not then be taxable, that this space will not be subject to property tax?
Technically, they wouldn't be. I don't have a timeline for when that conversion will be requested. But I also want to point everyone out to the agreement that was recently proposed to the city, where any time Yale asked to convert any taxable properties, they would remain 100% taxable for the first 3 years and step down 10% all the way through up to year 13. So that plan would be including that. And so any request would be subject to that.
Thank you. And do you happen to have the financial figure about how much property tax Naples paid?
I don't have it, but that's publicly accessible through the New Haven Tax Assessor website. You can look it up. That's at the 90 Wall Street location.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for that question. Lana.
Hi, yeah, so I think overall I really like this design. I am curious. I think sometimes these public-private kind of partnership open spaces can be a little bit tricky in terms of whether or not the public feels like they can actually access these spaces. So I know you said it sounds like there's like a glass door leading to the patio. I'm wondering how people will know that they can access that space.
Yeah, so if you're in Blue State here, this new door we're proposing at the rear goes into a lobby. There's the stairs down or the elevator if you need it. So the terrace would either be accessed by going out and then back up there, or through the corridor, which in the renderings you can see is sort of a glass wall. So I think it will be, we're also proposing to replace inside this corridor 2 areas of storefront that would have visual access. So even though you're looking through a connector, you're looking through glass. So I think the visual connection to the new terrace, especially because it's at the same level, will be much more evident than what there is now, which is just the one bench kind of down low. So we are trying to make it visible and accessible as well as we can.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks, Lena. Any other questions? Answers.
Does the elevator where you have the red dotted line, does that serve the upper floors of the building, the offices, or are those only accessible by the staircase that's on the end near the music school?
Right. Those do serve upper levels. What we're anticipating is a control solution which will allow, this is an existing elevator and existing stairs, will allow this sort of half stop going from the lobby to this upper lobby without card control, but then to access the Yale levels would be your Prox card access for the upper floors. So that lets this remain open to the public, separate from the academic uses above, or the faculty use above.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, seeing none, thanks for the report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
And
sir.
one
Go ahead.
item I'd like to add is there is a submission to BZA. It'll be heard on April 12th, and that's to request the variances that James Fulton mentioned.
So look out for that, and we'll send out this deck and this conversation in our minutes as well, so you can feel free to share it with other people who might want to reminisce about the good times with Rose at Naples. So she will be missed. And good luck to y'all, and thanks for the update. And when we get a little bit closer in December, if there's anything else or another update, feel free to come back. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. All right. So let's pivot briefly and talk about a couple general updates, and then get into elections, and then we'll open up the bigger forum here. So a couple things coming up soon. I'll make some announcements. Democracy School is open. Here is the link in the chat. Democracy School is run by the city. It's a really cool program to educate residents about the structures, services, and leaders in the city of New Haven through a series of public information forums. And you should come if you want. There are applications, and you have to have them in by April 1st. Additionally, there is a hearing, let me crack this open real quick, probably at City Services Environmental Policy, organized by Alder Furlow and Alder DeCola, on April 13th about noise. I think this is everything from the music that people have been reporting coming from the sound or coming from the harbor. I imagine they're coming from speakers and not from the harbor itself. Motorcycles which is something we talk about a lot in this meeting. And quote, noises from individual homes in our city which blast their music and fireworks clearly in excess of allowable decibel levels and outside of the permitted time frames. So those seem like conversations that we've talked about a lot. And I think if we're trying to figure out how our elected officials can empower our both the police department but other people to enforce those ordinances, we would need to support that. I think right now it is just the police department that can enforce those ordinances. They're the only ones with the noise meters, but clearly that doesn't work all the time. So if you would like to change that, I do think going to that hearing would be important. Laura, are you still here? Laura Clark. There she is, site projects. Would you like to talk
Yes,
about
I'm
that?
still here, but the person who can talk about the redistricting stuff, sorry, is Aaron. Who's still
Aaron,
here.
fabulous.
Call on Aaron.
Aaron, would you like to give an update on redistricting? Otherwise, I can walk through it as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ian.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I just wanted folks to know that there is going to be local redistricting happening. The state has finished. Can everybody hear me? Am I coming through okay?
Coming through great.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the state has concluded its redistricting for state representatives, state senate districts, congressional districts. That's all done with, but we're doing local redistricting now. So they're redrawing all of the ward boundaries, which has to be done every 10 years after the census is completed. And the purpose of it is really to equalize the population in each ward, which is a requirement according to our constitution, the state constitution, and the federal constitution. So you have to equalize the population in each ward to a plus or minus of 10%. So some parts of the city have grown a lot more than others in the last 10 years. Some have not grown at all. Some have actually contracted in population. In fact, Worcester Square has declined in population over the last decade for various reasons, mainly because of Farnham Courts or Mill River Crossing losing some of its population. But downtown is probably going to be one of the most affected areas by redistricting because there's been significant population growth in downtown and in the Ward 7 area. So parts of Ward 7 are going to have to be kind of meted out, farmed out to other wards. So there are going to be some pretty significant impacts in terms of who your representatives are going to be, what ward you're in, and where your polling places will be going forward. So I think people should be thinking about some of these issues of representation. What is a community of interest for our neighborhoods? How do we define communities of interest, and how should that be reflected in the ward maps that are drawn? And also, how can we make sure that we draw the wards so that we don't have this very confusing issue with people's polling places switching back and forth between even and odd numbered years, which has been a substantial problem in the last decade and continues to be a source of confusion even after 10 years. So we need to figure out a way to eliminate that problem in redistricting. There will be a public hearing on this March 29th. I hope folks will come and testify. Unfortunately, I am not expecting there to be any additional public hearings after that. And unfortunately, I'm not expecting there to be a draft map of the proposed changes that will be available for public review before that hearing. So that's unfortunate. It would be nice if they did release a draft map that people could comment on. But people should come to that hearing and make general comments about what they think a community of interest is in the context of downtown Worcester Square, and how that should be reflected in the new map. So that's the story. And we'll have some more educational materials, frequently asked questions, flyers, stuff like that. And that will be on the New Haven Votes Coalition website and social media.
Thank you, Aaron.
I have a question, Ian. I have a question for Aaron. What I think Anstris said to me the city should really hire a consultant to make these ward changes so that the alders themselves are not making these ward changes. Do you think that there's any possibility that that would happen and that it would be a good result?
Yeah, so the city will be hiring a consultant. It's really a technical consultant to help them with managing the mapping and the data files and the GIS files, the shape files. But they will be guiding the process and ultimately making the decisions. The consultant they're going to hire is just to provide technical advice. I do support and have long supported a citizens redistricting process so that legislators are not drawing their own districts, which is basically the legislators choosing their voters and not the voters choosing the legislators. I just think that's problematic philosophically. That would probably require a change to our city charter. And we do have an opportunity in charter revision that's going to be coming up next year to contemplate and possibly make that change to do it. Many states like California have done and adopt a citizens redistricting commission. So I hope that answers your question, but thanks for the question, Laura.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Aaron, for that answer. Answers.
Yeah. So I would guess that even though we don't have a citizens redistricting process, there wouldn't be anything that would actually prevent more significant participation by citizens in the process. So it would be good if that happened. Aaron, is there a deadline for redistricting? When does this work have to be?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's another good question. The process, there's a 6-month window that the city has to complete this process from when the state completes its maps of legislative districts. So the clock started ticking, I think, at the end of November 2021, and we have until May 31st to complete this process. So that's a very short window of time. It's a very truncated time period, which means that they're going to be moving with quite a bit of haste, and they're only going to have one public hearing and not making a draft map available unless there's significant public pressure for them to do so. So it is a constraint that we're working within, a very compressed time limit here, which has to do with, the state. It has to do with COVID and that delaying a lot of the census data and that delaying the state redistricting process and everything getting pushed back. But May 31st is the final deadline.
And just one other thought. You mentioned Farnham Court. I think that the issue was that when the census was done, Farnham Court was depopulated, and now the main building is done and the townhouses to the rear are nearing completion. So many people will be moving back in. I don't think the actual number of residents will change much. But as I understand it, Aaron, tell me if I'm wrong, that these maps will be based on the census, which was basically 2 years ago, not what, and it doesn't include anything about projections. So for instance, in Worcester Square, we have 3 and now 4 and maybe another 5th gigantic buildings that are near completion that will have something over 800 people in them. So am I right that what we all know is coming isn't going to be counted or considered in the redistricting by May?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We're operating with the data from the 2020 census, and that is just a snapshot in time. And we know from some recent reports that have come out that there are people who have been undercounted, certain demographic populations that have been significantly undercounted in the census. But we have to work with the data that we have, and yeah, it's quite possible that we're not counting everybody in Mill River Crossing who's moved into Mill River Crossing in the last 18 months. It's almost certainly true we're not counting the people who will be moving into some of the new developments on Olive Street in the next few years, and the population will be significantly out of whack, by the end of this decade, and that's why we'll need to adjust it again in 2030. So you're definitely correctly pointing to a limitation of this process.
In effect, actually next year, or just even by the end of the summer, it's going to be really different. All I can say is, I don't know how or what to do to go to a meeting on the 29th if even a draft map isn't available. I'm wondering if even something like, if there's a few things being considered, to even, if the city could possibly even show 2 or 3 possible ways of doing things based on the census data. In a way, it's like going in blind. Everyone will say, you want to form a community of interest, but how do you talk about it in an effective way? We know that there's some wards in town that are really strangely distorted, and I know a lot of people are paying attention to it and trying to think of ways of correcting it. Like Ward 19, if you look at the map, it's just this craziest shape. It doesn't have a center to it at all. So there's some like that are very obviously need to be reshaped. But I think we need, even with this compressed time, I think it would be better if something could be worked out. So even if they have a hearing just to hear basic ideas on the 29th, or even hear questions from the public, it's almost would be a better use of the meeting just to come and ask questions that could inform what they look at. And I think it would be good if they came back with a draft before a final vote. It's horribly important. So
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with anything you said. I think using the March 29th meeting public hearing to ask questions, I think is reasonable to define what community of interest means to us in our management team district. How do we define Worcester Square? How do we define downtown? How would we like to see that represented in terms of ward lines? And then also, yes, I completely agree. Asking for them to release a draft map once they've come up with new ward lines, release that to the public, and then have another public hearing where people are invited to comment on that, because it is very difficult for people to attend a public hearing and comment on something that hasn't been fully formulated. So yeah, I think the public hearing is an opportunity to apply pressure to ask them to do it, to release a draft map for people to comment on before they're actually voting to approve it. So we should have a draft map that we can review before they're voting on it.
Thank you. I see Laura Brown with a hand up. Laura Brown, what do you got? Go ahead.
Okay, great. I know that I have a little bit of time in the agenda later, but I just wanted to chime in on this discussion point with regard to redistricting, because we do have city plan staff involved in the process as well. And I wanted to note with regard to Insta's comment about mapping, that did come up in another meeting I had today with Esri, who is our consultant that provides mapping services to the city. So we know this is a need. The thing we're facing right now is that our mapping staff in the department is leaving on March 25th. And we also just had a change of staff that supports city GIS mapping. So we have a new person. Can you hear me okay? Is it really?
It's a little choppy and garbly. I think we're getting the gist of it, but for later you might want to call in.
Okay, yeah, I can do. Actually, I have called in, so maybe I'll just switch to the phone.
Okay, great. right, so hold that thought. I think this is a really interesting discussion while Laura gets her audio sorted out. And I do think that one of the things that we're hearing here is, it's my understanding that the group that is launching this and this public hearing is before the Board of Alders, right? So our alders are the ones that are able to report back on that. So if you do go to that, I feel like, Aaron, if you wanted to build any communication that you'd like shared through the management team, we'd be happy to share it about that hearing and what people could do and what kind of questions people may want to ask. Ms. Brown? Oh, no, you're just muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I apologize that the sound is so bad. And now we have feedback too. So I guess just to wrap up that point, I just wanted to let folks know that I'm listening. I wrote down these notes, and I will put your request forth to everyone in the city that we can garner to get some mapping together for the 29th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add, folks, I really thank the management team. Thank you, Ian, for the time. I put my contact information on the chat, and I am hoping, there's some really great mapping software where you can kind of draw your own maps, just kind of shift things around and explore how things would look, according to your own philosophy about community of interest and how you define that. Dave's redistricting is I think the best app for doing this. I'm trying to make sure that they have the data in there so that we can do that at the local level. It works really well for drawing congressional districts and state districts, but I think we're going to try to do that for local districts as well. Maybe we'll have a pizza party where people can draw their own ward maps for New Haven. So stay tuned about that. But thanks again.
Thank you. And thank you to New Haven Votes for leading the charge on that. All right. So let me just quickly run down this. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. We're going to... Sorry, any other questions on that? Seeing none. Okay, thanks. We're going to officially say that nominations are open. So this is the period, we are entering the period of nominations for the Downtown Worcester Square Management Team's Executive Board. We have 7 members of that board. There is a chair, a co-chair, a secretary, a treasurer, and then 3 members at large. I can count, I promise. The members at large are on 3-year terms and the officer positions are 1-year terms. So right now we have chair, co-chair, secretary, and treasurer up for nomination and re-election, and secretary, co-chair, what are we calling it? Yeah, co-chair and chair will all be vacant. So we need people in the community to set up. That is myself vacating the chair position, Lana is vacating co-chair, and we had the wonderful Madeline Ardito, who was our secretary briefly, but then moved to the Hill and had to step down. So the other folks on the team are Tony Kozlowski on this call, and Anstris filling those other e-board seats, and Greg Ludowski from the bike shop. So there are openings. Please feel free to nominate yourself or nominate someone else that you think would be good for it. No seats will be forced on anybody, so if they don't want to accept it, they don't have to, but sometimes people are shy. And all of this will go out in the email and a special email as well. So you can look for that coming up soon. So again, just to be clear, nominations are now open. They will close on the end of day, April 8th, 2022. So you have just about 3 weeks to nominate or be nominated. We will have an executive board meeting, the meeting following, or the Monday following the 8th, and then our normal meeting on is it the 15th again? No, the 19th of April. All right, that was that. Any questions? Anybody? Anybody want to be chair? Anstrus, your hand's up. Anstrus, you're on mute.
I didn't raise my hand to become chair.
I figured.
Because of my role with the Urban Design League. I'm glad to be at large, but not an officer. But I thought it would be good to also remind people that whether you live or work in this district, because it's downtown, our bylaws say that you can either live or work here. So you don't have to be a resident to join the e-board or to join the management team.
Thank you. It is correct and very important, especially for the downtown business owners and workers. All right, so let's move back to our previous conversation and hope that let's not do that. Let's move to Laura Brown, have that presentation, and then we'll open up the other conversation. I apologize for that. Laura, you have screen share, and the floor is yours.
Oh, okay, thanks. Ian, do you have the slides to share? I thought that's...
Happy to share them. I have them ready.
Okay, perfect. I think that would work best, just to keep my screen coordination to a minimum. So actually, you don't need to put them up quite yet, so I'll let you get situated, and I'll do a little quick intro here. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. Let me close that window here. So thank you all for having me. It was really super helpful to be able to listen into your meeting before this quick presentation here. I guess there's nothing super surprising, but just as a little bit of a preface, I'm not prepared tonight to have a public hearing on 78 Olive Street, although we are very happy to join your meeting in the future, again, on specific topics of interest. And I know you are a very engaged and active community, and I am certainly very aware of what's going on in Olive Street, and I've attended those meetings and heard your voices. Also on the Whitney Street site, I've been attending those meetings as well. That said, some of that predates me, some of the work on this predates me. So like I said, if you have technical aspects or technical questions on aspects of these projects, I'd really love to bring our zoning director along or some of our planning staff to answer those and make sure we can get accurate information for you on those specific projects. So all that say is that I started very recently with City Plan at the end of March as the new director. And I've been living in New Haven for about 8 years from Taunton, Massachusetts, which is just east of Providence. So I'm a Southern New Englander. And I have a 5-year-old son at Edgewood School in New Haven. We live in Westville and own a home there. My background is pretty diverse, which is coming in handy at City Plan. I've managed nonprofit organizations. I've worked in all aspects of planning and community development, local economic development, community food systems. And most recently, I worked as an extension educator with the University of Connecticut Extension, which essentially coordinates community education programs to help decision makers make better decisions. So this could be research, surveys, reports, community engagement, facilitation, leadership development, board development, all these sorts of things that sort of build community capacity. And that I feel like is really going to come in handy here too, because that will be my approach here at City Plan, is to work, as much as possible with you as residents of our city, to build capacity to help you all make informed decisions as much as possible. And I intend to employ our staff to do that as well. So most recently, I've been working on bike pedestrian connectivity, trails, parks, and greenways projects with some of the other folks on the call today. I know you from that previous life. And before I get started, I did just want to let you know that one of our other new staff planners, Jacob, is here, and just wanted to give him an opportunity to introduce himself to you, so you may see him again. Jacob, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Robison. I am the new Senior Project Manager for the City Plan Department. I do have Laura beat as far as newness, though. This is my second day on the job, so I'm pretty new. I'm coming over from the city of Bridgeport. I was a planner with their planning department over there for several years. And I worked a lot with boards and commissions and the NRZ, neighborhood revitalization zones in Bridgeport, which function a lot like CMTs over here. So I know that you guys are very active and have a lot of very diverse people with very diverse interests. And I'm seeing that through my first meeting with you guys. But I'm very excited to work on these projects in the future. If I don't work directly with the CMT, I think there's a very high possibility that I'll work with individuals on this call on individual projects. So that I'll just keep that short and sweet, and I'll hand it back over to Laura.
Thanks, Jacob. So if you're able to pull up the slides, Ian, I'll really try not to make this too painful for you. 7:30 p.m. I know you're all waiting to get your kids to bed and or eat your dinner. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we do in City Plan. I know many of you interact with us on a regular basis, and so you know our work. But I think this will be helpful just to kind of reframe this and give you a little taste of what's on our radar. So I apologize, I left out the downtown and the Worcester Square community management team here, but I always do want to acknowledge that the land that we talk about and every day and our work revolves around is the territory of Native peoples who continue to steward the land. And so just wanted to provide that land acknowledgement. So if you could go ahead and forward. Great, thank you. So this is just a broad overview of what we do at City Plan. We serve as a regulatory body for land use development. We engage the public in plans for long-term sustainable growth and development. We do a lot of coordination with other departments and agencies, and I hope to improve on that as one of my goals as the new head of City Plan, and really improve our customer service as the first point of contact. As many of you know, City Plan is sometimes the place you call when you're not quite sure exactly where to find what you need related to a property. We get a lot of business owners and certainly developers that are on at our front door. So that's an area where we're doing great. I think coming out of COVID time, there's a lot of opportunity to make some process improvements. So we'll certainly be looking at that. You can go ahead to the next slide. These are some of the land use regulatory functions that we take on at City Plan. So this is related to the zoning ordinance, which we've talked about a little bit today, but we also oversee the Board of Zoning Appeals, the City Plan Commission, and the Historic District Commission. And we do environmental reviews, all things required by the state, as well as coastal area management and inland wetlands regulation. So, I understand there are zoning issues that have come up directly relevant to the areas where you live, but I wanted to let you know, and I'll give a little preview here, that we do have some zoning, reconsidering the effectiveness of our zoning code in the context of our future comprehensive plan redo. That's certainly on our radar. So a lot of what we're seeing right now, in my view, is sort of some discord between our zoning code, what it looks like now, and the reality of what's happening in our city. So we need to take a really deep look at the zoning ordinance. You can go ahead. This is our team as it stands right now, and you can feel free to reach out to any of us. Our phone numbers and emails are here. Our staff are not fully back in our offices yet, but we are all reachable. We'll be happy to get back to you. If you don't hear from us right away, bear with us. We get a huge volume of requests from residents. So we're all here to serve with great intentions. We just sometimes aren't as prompt as we'd like to be. So let me know how things are going. We are a very competent team, and we're happy to listen. You can go ahead. These are some of the things that are on my radar. Certainly, like I said, the comprehensive planning redo, which is due in 2025, and we're already thinking about best ways to approach the engagement process such that we're really hearing from all voices in the city. We're looking at the implementation, as you know, of the accessory dwelling units and the inclusionary zoning ordinance. And then we also manage large projects like Downtown Crossing, Farmington Canal wayfinding projects, Long Wharf Union Station, the Coliseum, which are all big projects that are, I'm sure you've heard about. Like I said, my heart is in trails, parks, greenways, bike ped access, and as a cyclist, I'd really like to give some attention to that and the connectivity to existing green spaces and trails, but also to kind of the pedestrian safety inside our city and bike access. We also have the boathouse, which is open, and our staff are managing the boathouse right now. We wanted to let you know that's available for event booking. And then an additional area of focus is the zoning process improvements that I mentioned. So all of these are kind of currently on our radar. You can go ahead. And we really want you engaged. So if you haven't visited our website, we have mapping and permitting tools online. I can't tell you it's the most accessible, easiest website to find everything that you need, but I'm happy to take feedback on that. And I hope you will explore the resources that are there. You can stop by our office. We have walk-in hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 12, or you can make appointments with any of our staff if you have specific questions or looking for a record. I also wanted to let you know, yes, thank you for highlighting that we have a notification list for both the City Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if you'd like to get on that, you can email any of us, or you can actually join the City Planning Commission website mailing list right from this website, and we will add you to the list of with the agendas and links to the applications for those meetings. I encourage you to do that. We're also very much encouraging the public to submit your interest in joining one of our boards or commissions that we staff. So that would be the Historic District Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. In particular, right now, we're looking for nominations for members. So if you're interested, please let us know. We heard a little bit about the redistricting effort, which I said, I did mention our staff are involved in. That's another way to get involved. So please attend that hearing. It's great that you have some folks in your community that are involved in that process. So you can go ahead. These are our hub sites that have a wealth of information about those 3 regulatory bodies that we oversee. I would encourage you to explore them. And there you'll find all the materials for our meetings, including agendas and staff reports once they're made public, and the applications once they're become public record. So you can go ahead, and then I'll take any questions in the chat. I thank you, and I look forward to listening. It's a great pleasure to listen to your meeting, and we hope to join you again. I think
Thanks
I
so
saw some
much.
things come up.
Yeah, I've dropped all these links in the chat, including your email. Anybody, I'll leave this up for another moment before we pull it down. But any other questions? I see Lana.
Hello, thank you so much for sharing. I'm a planning student right now, and so this is all extremely exciting as I'm thinking about this in the context of what I'm studying. I am also really glad to hear you started off your presentation talking about capacity building, because I think that that's something that this group especially can speak to. Where a lot of people who care about how things are shaking out and how things are developing. And I think a lot of times what happens is we find out about things are already moving along in the process. We're playing a lot of catch up. And I think that there's just a lot of tokenizing of the community in terms of actually receiving community input. So I am, glad to hear about some of your goals for this. And yeah, I would just like to see more meaningful community involvement, especially in development projects as we're going forward, so people don't feel like they have to go to a million meetings and that they're already late to the game to get things done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Lana. I see Ms. Linda Reeder.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to the meeting, and I appreciate your interest in resident input, because as you alluded to, we will have an interest in that. I worked with a group of about 8 of my neighbors starting about 2.5 years ago in response to a proposal to have Grand Avenue rezoned as a commercial gateway in the same model as on Whaley Avenue. And while we opposed that for reasons that those 2 different streets are very different in terms of scale and in terms of the depth of adjacent residential property lots, we came up with another proposal that would increase the density and encourage development, hopefully on Grand Avenue, without hurting the neighbors and hurting Grand Avenue. We were hoping you would be willing to meet with us, and we could take you, we could meet on Zoom. I did a little presentation, like a 7 or 8 minute presentation in this body in September, I think. Basically, we presented it to city planning almost exactly 2 years ago, and then we haven't heard anything since. And after I presented it here, Anstris and others thought that perhaps what we had put together would be useful to other neighborhoods as well. So we're very eager to work with you and your staff. Again, it's very close to your office. If you wanted to take a walk, we could give you a physical walk, and we'd also have things we can show you on Zoom, and that we can share documents, what we sent previously, things like that.
Thank you, Linda. I've browsed the results of that effort. Was it the commercial corridor planning effort? Yeah, I haven't, I'm not fully up to speed, so it would be really helpful to get together and sort of revisit some of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments, interest?
Ian, I did see Aaron's chat question about the next update of the plan of conservation and development, and what kind of outreach will be conducted. So the city's comprehensive plan serves as our plan of conservation and development. There is a regional plan of conservation and development that's on a different timeline that I don't oversee, but the city's comprehensive plan is that plan that I discussed, which is due in 2025. But we are starting the discussions at this point to think through what that community engagement strategy looks like. And what I can tell you is that I learned a lot from the cultural equity planning process that the city went through just recently. And I think there's some things to be learned about some new or more authentic ways of engaging the public that are not so sort of consultative in nature. And I'm really, if anyone has ideas about that, what I'd like to do is pull together a working group to kind of advise the engagement process on the comprehensive plan. But my Deputy Director, Ann Harchin, is going to be leading that planning effort. So reach out if you have an interest in being involved in kind of the advisory side of that. And it's in the really early stages right now because I've been on for 2 weeks. I haven't had those meetings yet. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And I will echo that. Reach out, get involved. I'm now starting to understand just how difficult it is to convert folks with opinions to folks who are doing things, and I mean that with love and no disparagement, please. But just in recruiting people to this team, I'm getting it. So if you have an opinion, it's probably worth something, and please get involved and figure out how to be part of the process. So thank you, Laura and Jacob, for showing up tonight. I think at this point we can transition to our previous conversation, and I welcome you to please stay and check it out. It might be interesting. How shall we pick up? I remember the queue was Alex and Answers, so we can add you guys back in, and then anybody else who would like to pile on after that. You can either throw your name up, put your hand up in the chat, and I'll keep a running tally. Mr. Werrell, are you still here? You are.
I am still here, yes. And because I spoke first, I thought that Ms. Farwell could speak if she'd like to.
I'd be happy for you to rearrange that. Answers?
Yeah, okay. Alex, thanks for bringing this up. This project goes to a vote, I think, is it April 4th at the Board of Alders? Is that right? So, and the public record remains open until then. So there were people that came but didn't speak at the last meeting, and there's still an opportunity to offer comment. And I think that it would be good to know. Also, Alder Sabin said that he is still meeting with the developer to talk about possible changes. And I think something that's been a problem all along has been that it's only been Alder Sabin, and in all of the years I've lived and worked, particularly in this community, there hasn't been a time that any of the alders went into meetings and didn't include the community with them. We had a very strong working relationship with Alder Aaron Greenberg, and we worked on many good planning things together. And so it was absolutely inclusive. So I think that's important. And when this first started moving forward and we heard about it, I had a conversation with the attorneys for the developer and asked that we set up something so that this would be discussed in a workshop type format, and use the development committee of the Worcester Square, downtown Worcester Square management team as the vehicle for that we would simply host a more open discussion before it went to legislation in city plan. And I spoke at the city plan commission, or without being able to see the advisory report. It wasn't going to be released until after, which was a problem in and of itself, and said I had no comment on it because, one, I hadn't seen the advisory report, and two, the developers had offered to do this project with the management team. But then Alder Sabin decided that it was to take it over and to leave us out. And so it's been a very difficult situation and something I've never seen before. And we have, between downtown and Worcester Square, just in this district, some people that are on this call, a whole host of people with credentials in architecture and planning that could be brought into a discussion, and we haven't been. So I think that my main point right now would be, if it's news to us that there's still ongoing discussions, and it really should include us. We're the people most affected. Your ward is centered. The people on this side of the track are the most affected by the plan. And They aren't, for the most part, your constituents, but we are the people that are most affected. This has gone terribly off track, and it shows in the project.
Thank you, Answers. I see Kevin McCarthy, but I don't know if you're looking for, if there's a question or a comment that you're looking
comment?
for response there. Oh, sorry. I don't want to. I want to leave a moment for Answers, if for anyone to respond to that, but I'm not sure if there was a question in there.
Oh.
I mean, I can respond. Answers. I mean, I appreciate, your feedback, and we've talked a bunch about this, and I think, as I've said, I feel like this was a really difficult process, and I know that, the result has not been what you and some other folks wanted to see. And I mean, in terms of, how the process went, I would respectfully disagree that the community was shut out of the process. I think there were 3 community meetings, and the conversation that I had with the developer recently was I set up a meeting between the developer and the city's fire marshal to talk about the building, the layout of the building, and whether the fire lane that the fire marshal's office had required could potentially be moved and switched with some of the parking spaces to change around the building design. And frankly, I guess in the future, I'd be happy to, that could be a public meeting. But I think that, it's difficult to include the whole neighborhood in every single conversation that we have about things like that. So, I apologize if that was the wrong way to approach it, but I thought that I was just trying to, clarify a few things, and I think that sometimes it's helpful to be able to do that in smaller settings. But I was planning to. I don't have any updates, as I said before, on what's happening with that, and wanted to wait until I sort of talked with the community about it, but was definitely planning on having more community conversation about what that would look like if there's anything that comes of it. So that's all there. And I mean, broadly, sort of going back to some of what we were talking about earlier about, the differences between this site and the Whitney site, I think it's really important to me that, that we consider all these projects on an individual basis. And I think, if the Whitney site had been proposed on Academy Street, I would have opposed it in the same way that I'm opposing it on Whitney, because I think that if you're trying to build a BD size project on a RM zone, that basically means that you're trying to get rid of the entire city's zoning code, and you could build anything you want anywhere, which I don't think is what that's not what we want. And I think that there's a lot of really important differences between the Whitney project and the one that's proposed at Olive Street. One important one just being, the fact that the folks at Whitney were just incredibly rude to our community and were yelling at residents. And I think, if we had taken I wasn't supportive of the original project that PMC proposed, and as it changed, I felt more comfortable with it, and ultimately it felt like it was the best thing, the best option on the table was to support it. I don't feel that way about the Whitney site. I also will just note that there were a lot of folks who I heard from who are supportive of the Olive Street project, and I haven't heard from a single person who is supportive of the project on Whitney. So that also matters to me. Those are just a few thoughts. Obviously happy to, hear more from you all.
Thank you, Alder. Kevin, I want to respect the previous cue before we go to Linda and then Alex and then Astris. Did you want to speak, Mr. McCarthy? Seeing no response. Ms. Reeder.
I think that Alex was next. he had deferred to Anstris, but
Good. Alex, would you like to speak or to defer yet again? Your call.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Reader. Yeah, one of my old bosses actually used to use the argument that it's easier to get things done when there are fewer voices in the room. And I understand the general logic of the old adage about too many cooks spoiling the broth, but a rhyme with broth is Roth, and Alder Roth used to invite Worcester Square Management Committee to meetings with developers. In fact, we used to meet with PMC, who would attend or would send a representative to the meeting. And I resent the idea that this is best tackled unilaterally, because I think as the fact that people are here at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, we care about our neighborhood, we know about our neighborhood, and we are willing to fight for our neighborhood, and we want to represent the best interests of our neighborhood. I also understand, Alder Sabin, that this was what you call a really difficult process and a tough decision. I also recognize that as a kind of euphemism that's used in politics to appease both sides to a certain extent and say, well, this wasn't easy, but this is what I decided. Just thinking back to the last meeting regarding the project, 8 people opposed to the project spoke, 4 people opposed to the project wrote letters. Among those in opposition was Alder Roth, who mentioned site-specific things. And so I really find it difficult to believe that these processes were substantively different. I look at your email, and just to read parts of it again, quote, "It seems to me that the approval of this PDU application," which is to say, and this is not a quote, the application from Aptitude for Whitney, excuse me, would essentially make the city's zoning code meaningless, adding in the complete lack of respect or care showed by the developers and the rejection of community input about how a new building on the site could fit into the neighborhood. This proposal should not go forward, end quote. A few things trouble me about this, starting with the idea that all of a sudden the city's zoning code is some sacrosanct scripture that must be upheld, and that it would be heresy to oppose any change to zoning. And as I mentioned before you joined the call, the entire point of a zoning process is that these people, PMC, were seeking an exception to the zoning. So I suppose my question, one of my questions, is about when is and when is not zoning sacrosanct? When is it gospel and when is it not? Because to hear these arguments about how one development over here is okay, but the other development over there is not okay, that begins to smell of a bit of NIMBYism. It reminds me of some of the Greenwich op-eds some of us have read regarding affordable housing in that neighboring community. But what really irritates me about it is not so much the NIMBY aspects of it, but the idea of the neighborhood inclusion. As you say, Alder Sabin, in your letter, the rejection of community input. As Ms. Farwell just alluded to, actually our community was shut out from these meetings with the developers. When there was a face-to-face with developers, it was covered in the Independent as being primarily met with simple, I don't know, let me get back to you. I would not say that that's a very productive meeting because it did not yield answers, nor was it able to be on footing in which we were able to talk about community concerns. I've reached out to you personally about my beliefs regarding the affordable units. For instance, for the benefit of other people in here, 80% of AMI for a single bedroom is, I believe, euphemism for Yale graduate students. If you look at the actual financial statistics of our area, 80% you cannot say is going to help a family that's really down on their luck, nor would a one-bedroom apartment help them. So a lot of these concerns that I have could have been ameliorated earlier on in the process. And instead, our community management team was not invited to the table. And that really troubles me. I really disapprove of that. So I'll have more questions in just a moment, but I'd like to give you a chance to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Werrell. Alder Sabin, would you like to respond? Or I don't know. To be honest, everyone, I'm feeling a little in the crossfire here, so I'm going to try to shepherd a queue along and make sure that we can move through this conversation productively and respectfully. And I thank everyone for being clear that while tensions and emotions are high, that does not necessarily mean that anything that is said has any less weight to it. So I appreciate that and want to point that out. Mr. Sabin, Alder Sabin.
Thanks, Ian. And thanks, Alex, for those thoughts and comments. I mean, there was a lot there, obviously. So, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to remember to respond to everything, but I mean, again, I will say I felt like the process with several community meetings was pretty open, and I mean, there's also were 2 public hearings at which folks had the opportunity to testify. I'm happy in the future to make sure that there are more meetings between community members and developers. I think that, on this last meeting, again, this was just sort of a clarifying question that I felt like I wanted to figure out what the answer was before we were able to, discuss it as a neighborhood. But, maybe that was the wrong way to approach it. And I'm sorry if that was the wrong way to approach it. In terms of some of your other thoughts about, about the affordable housing and NIMBYism, I mean, it's a little difficult to know what to say, because I think that, I feel like the project at Olive Street with 14 affordable housing units, I feel like it is in the best interest of our city to support that project. And I laid out those reasons in a lot of detail in my, when I talked to the legislation committee, and I'm happy to explain more now, but I mean, I think that, when we have the opportunity to support 14 new units of affordable housing, and I, of course, recognize that the amount of rent that folks would be paying in those units is not as low as we would want, but 14 working people in our city getting housing is a really important victory. I also think that, the opportunity for transit-oriented development is important. The differences between this site and the one on Whitney related to historic buildings and the abutment of residential property, there not being a tax abatement, and the community support. I mean, those are all differences that I think are important to me. I don't think that, if I had a reflexive answer, just yes, no matter where you want to build an apartment building, that's great. I don't think that would be the right approach to this. So I'm trying my best to, have a nuanced approach and to listen to folks, and ultimately, my colleagues and I on the legislation committee, we decided to support the zoning change. And I think that, the fact that there are also a lot of, there are a bunch of business district 1 zones right around this site and apartment buildings next to the site, those things matter. And I think that they're just different different locations, and I think we're just trying to do our best to figure out what's really in the best interest of the city. So, that's how I feel about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I just have a few follow-up questions, and I do apologize for taking up more time. And I am sure that you're doing your best, and I am proud of you for being involved in local politics. The community involvement aspect, though, begins to rankle me, because at the end of the last hearing, you read from a speech that you'd already written. And that made it seem as if all the commentary that evening was pro forma, was just for show, that you'd already made your decision. And that doesn't really speak to me of listening keenly to the community. Also, one of the things that bothered me then and that bothers me now is that you spoke of housing in New Haven as a moral imperative. That if one were not a YIMBY, which is to say yes in my backyard, a yes to all housing developments, that one would perforce be opposed to affordable housing, would be opposed to ameliorating any housing crisis. So I suppose I'm also a little confused about where that moral crisis has gone, where the moral imperative has gone about the desperate need for housing, even if it is market rate. Also, you bring up consistently the differences in these projects, and you point to the fact that the developers were quite rude in the community meetings. I would just remind you, and I would implore that you look at public records regarding PMC's track record. They are not nice people. They have not played well with the other kids in the sandbox. They are a known quantity to both their renters and to the city itself, that they are not a nice, polite developer interested in developing a better city for all of us. As Anstris points out, as Ms. Farwell points out in the comments, 80% AMI is $54,950. For anybody who doesn't know in the chat, the starting salary for a New Haven employee in the public school system is $34,000. That's a huge, huge gap. And to say that 80% AMI in a small number of units is a major concession by a great white shark of a developer, I think is misguided. And again, and I apologize for repeating myself, if the neighborhood had been invited, as we previously were, to participate in negotiations and in talks with the developer, perhaps we could have pointed that out long before this. Instead, you also pointed out that people spoke in favor of the project. From my recollection of the initial, of the penultimate hearing, quite a few of them were from a clinic at Yale Law who lived near the Corsair building. So not at all in our neighborhood. In fact, the neighborhood was pretty vehemently against it numerically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Werrell.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, I think that I think it feels like you're trying to identify some hypocrisy in the two choices, and I would sort of just say that I don't really think that that's what this is about. I think ultimately, how I feel about what my role is in this process is just to try to do what's best in every situation and consider all the factors that are, that we have to deal with, and try to come to the best solution for the community. And I think that, that's what I tried to do in this process. And I think that at the end of the day, I think we may just disagree about whether it makes sense to have a building like what has been proposed next to the train station, and on the edge of the neighborhood. And I'd be more than happy to get coffee with anybody who wants to talk more about this and chat about these difficult issues, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you, Alder. I see Linda, Will Viederman, and Kevin. I will note the time and ask folks to keep their comments to a concise, feel free to voice your opinion, but a concise, and ideally, if you are asking a question, make that question clear.
I just wanted to say, I think there's a problem of perception, which has created a problem of credibility, because by working directly with PMC and then saying the other, we don't know what happened in those meetings. We know what you've told us has happened. And then the other meeting where the PMC wasn't even invited to the community meeting that I went to where you presented on their behalf. And so I think that's kind of the root of this problem. And I hope we've all learned something from this and can move on and be more respectful of the community and our input in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reeder. Mr. Viederman.
Thanks. I just wanted to briefly jump in. I live around the corner. I'm at right across from Sally's pretty much. And I'm really excited about this building. Is it perfect? No. Do I think it should go up? Absolutely. And so I will just say that I don't think the community is as united as has been portrayed this evening. And I'm grateful for Eli Alder-Sabin's vote and statement of support.
Mr. McCarthy.
And I think the board can take its time in making its decision on this application. There is a statutory deadline for zoning commissions to act, but New Haven zones pursuant to the special acts, not the statutes. And the state Supreme Court has said that that's an entirely separate grant of authority. So I don't know if there's anything urgent. There may be a possibility of working out a better deal. I don't know whether that will be coming forward, but I do think the board has some time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Kozlowski.
Thank you, Ian. Alder Sabin, you said that you were trying to find solutions that benefit the city and the neighborhoods at the same time. I'll try to believe that you honestly think that, but can you answer one question? How is dropping 2,000 people into a neighborhood good for the neighborhood? That's a mass tsunami of bodies. This is not going to bode well for our neighborhood. And yet you say you're thinking about our community. I really don't believe you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlowski.
Thanks, Mr. Kozlowski. I mean, this project is 136 units, and I did not represent Ward 7 or Ward 6 when any of the other units along this corridor were proposed or approved. So I can't speak to the process around those projects. I think these are important questions and difficult ones that we need to think about in terms of, what we want to see the future of the city look like. I think, when I talk to folks, when I knock on doors and talk to folks all over the city, I hear about a lot of different issues. Affordable housing is a big one. Property taxes are a big one. Public safety is a big one. Folks are concerned about climate change. And folks are concerned about jobs and supporting local businesses. And, I think that the density that's gone up within these couple of blocks is definitely a big change. I would say that I do think that in a lot of ways, having more folks living in the neighborhood is helpful for a lot of the, goals that I just described, we get a huge amount of property tax revenue, which, I hear from a lot of folks who are concerned about that, and renters are concerned as well about how that affects rent. The affordable housing is really important. I think that if we care about climate change, we need to make sure that we are making places for people to live where they don't have to drive long distances and can walk and bike and take the bus or the train, get to work. Having more people out on the street walking around is really good for public safety. And it also is really important to supporting our local businesses, a lot of whom are really struggling right now. And I know, I got a bunch of comments and support from some of the neighborhood businesses for this project. So, it's a difficult issue, and I understand that, these are big changes for sure. So I understand your concern about it.
Excuse me, Walter. You disavowed the prior units that are being built there. My question to that would be, why did you feel it an imperative to pile on? If it was so overcrowded, why are you making it more overcrowded?
I mean, I guess I think maybe we disagree a little bit about overcrowdedness, and I think that all of the goals that I just explained about what I think that we get from having a few more people living on parking lots instead of having them just be vacant lots. I think that ultimately, having the city grow is we need to make sure it happens in the right way, which is what that's the issue that I am and my colleagues on the board, we're all trying to balance as we make these decisions. But I do think that ultimately, if we are refusing to build new housing, we're going to see a lot of really bad negative consequences from that. So I'm trying my best to just balance, those competing priorities and values and goals, and the things that I hear about from folks in the community about who are concerned about being able to afford the rent, who are concerned about being able to stay in their homes with rising property taxes. So, these are tough issues, definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Alder.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlowski, and thank you, Alder Sabin. Are there any other comments on this evening? No? All right, well, I will say that it's always good to have fruitful discussion. It's always good to hear everybody. We are here third Tuesday of the month, 6 o'clock. Come on down, bring your friends. And if there are particular items that you would like to have a further and in-depth conversation about, please reach out ahead of time. You can send it to DWSCMT at gmail.com. That's Downtown Worcester Square CMT at gmail.com. And if it's a development issue like this, it's possible that we could have a special meeting of the development committee. We could have a smaller meeting, something earlier in the evening that's just dedicated to one project. But again, I think everyone on this board is looking to both create the space and the conversation around this, but also want to have a balance as well. So not a balance in opinion, but just a balance in time. That's all. Thank you. Seeing anybody else? Nothing? Okay. Mr. Sabin, Alder Sabin, would you like to say anything else?
I just put my email in the chat, and I'm very, very happy to talk more about any and all of these questions and issues anytime. So just shoot me an email.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, it's 8:22. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll put it up.
Thank you, Tony. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Do anything but say nay.
Yes.
I'll take it. If not in favor, say nay. And we will continue. Thank you very much. This meeting's adjourned. We will send out the recording in the minutes in the next day or two. And please look out for a separate email about nominations process. Have a great night, y'all.
Good night, Ian.
Good
Good
night.
night.